It's really hard to come back up here after that because I'm blown away. I had no idea that was going on. This is why I love this showcase so much, because I learned so much. Two takeaways from that I get is, first of all, we have a state that supports this kind of cutting edge development, and we need to continue the policies that allow these companies like this to continue to grow and be innovative. And the second thing is that we need to continue to highlight and to talk about these programs, exactly what they were talking about, so we make sure that these companies have access to capital that they need and workforce. I have a 13-year-old son, and I'm thinking the same thing. I'm going to get him out to see that, because that's incredible, and I'm just so impressed. So going on to our next speaker, when seconds count and lives hang in the balance, we want our very best communication system for our first responders. Our next speaker here is going to talk about the technology behind the first ever nationwide broadband network for public safety, which is FirstNet. So please join me in welcoming Ed Parkinson, who's the Director of Government Affairs for FirstNet.
Well, good morning. It's good to be back in South Dakota. Of the 5 years, I think, that I've been at FirstNet, this is my this is my 7th trip to the state. So it's always nice to be back here and see some familiar faces. First of all, thank you, obviously, to Cheryl and the AT&T team, Vernon, Mark, obviously from SDN and the South Dakota Chamber of Commerce. I just think right there, you just have, frankly, a snapshot really of what FirstNet is. It's about partnerships, and it's about what it is we can try and do to bring together, from FirstNet's perspective, public safety, state and local, as well as the private sector, to try and develop a solution that public safety can rely on with their lives. And that's the benchmark in which we're trying to achieve at FirstNet. So what I'll do today, I'm just going to walk through, it's just a series of slides, and I'm not someone who likes to do that, but I'd rather engage with you all. And so if you do have questions, please, either feel free to interrupt as we go, or at the end we can have some time just to talk about it. Don't let the accent fool you too. If you can't understand anything I'm saying, just raise your hand and be like, sorry, just say that again. I was born in Philadelphia, though, so don't worry, we're not outsourcing this to South Africa or anywhere else. So just to put Jeff Pierce on the spot, because it's always nice to make him and Mike, understand what we're going, and I've always respected the hell out of them. But this is a quote just coming from Jeff, I beg your pardon, related to the Sturgis motorcycle rally earlier this year. And I was in Wyoming last week, and I think just there, being in South Dakota and Wyoming, this is a reflection of the focus we have at FirstNet. This isn't a network just for New York and LA and Miami and Chicago. This is for everyone. And in the pamphlets that you had here, I was quickly reading through it. The blue document that you have on your tables there, every single page it references rural. And that's something that we're focused on too at FirstNet. We have particular milestones that we have to achieve in terms of the deployment of the system. And that is something that we hold at a very, very high standard. Chris Sambar, the SVP for the FirstNet project on AT&T's side, has made rural a priority. And while we have a 15% rural milestone for every year of deployment, Chris testified before Congress last year saying, or maybe earlier this year, saying that AT&T hopes to exceed that and get it up to close to the 20% deployment. And that's something that we are really going to hold AT&T accountable for. That is one of our roles at FirstNet, but we'll get into that a little bit more. But here, as you can see, it's not perfect, of course, but it's a good step. And I think, too, the broadband is really, it's another redundancy that public safety can rely on. Land mobile radio isn't going anywhere anytime soon for public safety. But as folks start to come through, and as we start seeing the younger generation of public safety users, who understand cell phones and understand, smartphones, and when they're probably given an LMR device for the first time, they kind of look at it a bit funny. And that's okay. But over time, we're going to see broadband becoming a much, much larger aspect of how public safety use the tools that they have at their care. So this is just a quick snapshot of the FirstNet story and really the history of how we came into existence. Obviously, following the attacks of 9/11, there was the commission report that really focused on the need for spectrum allocation for public safety. And that was a key piece of how we were able then to move a bill through Congress that was ultimately passed in 2012. There was the establishment of the organization, followed by a couple of years of outreach that Jeff and Mike were intimately involved in from about 2013 through to when we released a procurement process in 2016. what followed then was an RFP process that was about 18 months long. Ultimately, AT&T and their partners won that. And that then led to where we are today. There was a whole opt-in, opt-out process, which I'll touch on next, as well as then looking at how we were going to integrate the solution that AT&T put forward into state plans. So every governor had a choice whether or not to opt into the FirstNet, go along with the state plan that we had developed with the state, with AT&T, or to go and do it on their own. And then ultimately we're going to in the future, and I'll talk a little bit about that too. This is just a quick snapshot of what those state plans really encompassed. As all 56 states and territories decided to go with the FirstNet option. There were a few there hanging on at the end, but ultimately this was a negotiation. This was really a partnership between us and the state to make sure that the needs of South Dakota were reflected in the state plan. I mean, the network has to be able to respond to local challenges. There's no point in having a network up in... Did I just... That is the same in South Dakota. That is the same down in Miami. I mean, you've got different needs. You have different challenges. You have different natural disasters, potential events. A network that looks very different in LA is going to look very different to what you have up in Bangor, Maine. And so we have to take that into account. And so that was reflected ultimately in what those state plans were. But this is really how the public-private partnership is going to work. So as you can see there, we've got two sides of the coin. You have the authority side on the left-hand side there, which is me. And that's the team that we have at the FirstNet Authority. And on the right-hand side, you have AT&T. You can see two different FirstNet brands there. But ultimately what that's all about is it just shows the respective roles and responsibilities of what it is our responsibility, keeping AT&T accountable, making sure we engage with the state, making sure we engage with public safety, to see that AT&T is doing what they said they would do. What a novel concept for a program. There we go, I got one. That's a good start. At the same time, AT&T, they put their brand on the line here. And that's a huge, huge deal for a Fortune 10 company. They have gone all in. And, even if Cheryl wasn't in the room or any of the AT&T people, we've been very impressed with how they've started to integrate the FirstNet mission into everything that they're doing. Evan's going to be talking a little later on about smart cities, and I think that's just one aspect of the solution that we're going to see coming from AT&T in the future. Certainly when we think about a 5G type environment. When you start thinking about smart cities, smart buildings, how public safety can take advantage of the power of FirstNet, integrating that into the holistic nature and what AT&T can bring to it, I think that's a pretty powerful story and something that it's far from perfect yet, of course. But remember, we've entered into a 25-year contract with AT&T. And so therefore, as we start moving through the various iterations of the technology, today we're in 4G, soon it's going to be 5G, in time 6G, and then so on. That's going to be fascinating to see. I'm going to talk a little bit later about devices and so on. So I'll save my next thought on that. Skip ahead to here. So just a little bit about the technology. So what we've got here is really core of the network, and if you will, the central nervous system of what it is we're trying to put forward. So FirstNet's really driven by one public safety network platform and core. It's based on 3GPP standardized evolved packet core and IP multimedia subsystem. Basically, the core provides the basic network services, the mission critical features, priority preemption and so on. Secure access to public-private networks, PSEN and PSAP, enterprise and cloud applications, and just a variety of other solutions, quality of service, priority and preemption. This is a physically separate structure too. And so there's nothing virtual about this at this stage. We have our own separate core located in multiple locations for redundancy. And this separates us, frankly, from a lot of other solutions that are out there. This is something that we were very, very keen on, because obviously when you think about the cyber implications of a public safety broadband network, think of the traffic that's going to flow through that system. The cybersecurity has to be integral from every single aspect of the network. The traffic is encrypted from end to end, device through the core back out. And I think that's just, again, a key differentiator about what it is we're able to provide. I mentioned quality of service, priority and preemption, and really QPP is the standard against which we will be measured. We have been able to provide a flexible use case for how these will all interact with one another. And really having this at the cornerstone of what it is we're trying to achieve is fundamental to the system and what it is we're trying to achieve at FirstNet. The deployable solution is another aspect of what it is we're being able to bring forward. When you think of the system, and obviously in a very, very rural state like South Dakota, economically, it doesn't make sense to build towers all over the place, even though we are coming together with the state, and we did, through the state plan, provide a pretty aggressive state plan which provides new tower builds across the state in a variety of areas that we work together out with the state. But there will be obviously areas where there just won't be permanent coverage. When you think of the Sturgis rally, that's going to be a huge uptick in traffic. And so you're going to be able to have surge capabilities in the network. And this is where the deployables are really going to have a major role. In the contract with AT&T, they agreed to build 72 additional Band 14, that's our spectrum Band 14, 72 additional deployables on top of their national disaster recovery fleet, which has about 400 units that are pre-positioned across the United States in a variety of locations. And Jeff, I mean, keep me honest on this, but did South Dakota get a couple of these specific, they're going to be based in South Dakota or in the region? Just one? Yeah, but so there's one all the time that's going to be based in South Dakota, but that obviously what that means is the surrounding states that have others based around them will be able to move and pre-position based on the needs and based on the challenges that the state face. When you think of what happened just down in the Carolinas, down in Florence with the hurricane down there, a number of deployables were pre-positioned and then brought into the disaster areas to recover. And you know, we've had some really, really great testimonies coming out of AT&T and FirstNet's response to the storms down there. Far from perfect, of course, but it's a good beginning. And I think as public safety and as the states start understanding how they can leverage things like the deployables that are out there, we'll be able to see a better use case of how the state, how locals can use these in a much more efficient manner. So it's pretty exciting to see, you know, the first batch of these rolled out. And again, what you see there are just the simple cell light trucks, the Colts. But this is where I think the power of FirstNet will be able to take the advantage of involving technologies. When the drone community can start getting their act together in terms of developing potentially web mesh networks that can be lit up and just around a disaster area. When you think about the fires out west, I mean, you probably can't get one of these into super rural areas, but what if you can fly up a fleet of drones that can create a mesh network around where some firefighters are responding? And that could be something that we could take advantage of. We've had a number of interested drone companies approach us and looking at examples such as that. And then who knows, once we hit 5G, what the technologies are going to be able to be provided to public safety. And I think this is the great aspect of having a nationwide build. Those kind of technologies, they're not just going to be for the major metropolitan areas. Folks in South Dakota, Wyoming, you know, Montana, etc., will be able to take advantage of those in the same way as the guys down in downtown New York City. Just a really, really interesting and fascinating aspect of the solution. Another part of that is the rich device portfolio that we're building for public safety. If you go onto firstnet.com, under the device tab, you can see a full list of the devices that we have. And just 2 weeks ago, when Apple unveiled their new devices, they now have the Band 14 chips in all new Apple devices. And it's fascinating. For any of you who are watching this the last couple of years, we approached Apple about 3 years ago saying, you know, what's it going to take for us to get Band 14 into your phones? And you know, the FirstNet SIM that folks can just be able to switch out to make sure that public safety have access to Band 14. And you know, they were kind of oohing and ahhing, and you know, we're Apple. I mean, come on, you know, public safety broadband. You know, come on, it's not quite profitable for us, etc., etc. I don't want to be too cynical, but you know, that was the rough reaction. But it's changed now, and I think having the opportunity to take advantage of the AT&T device ecosystem, their purchasing power, again, that public safety otherwise wouldn't be able to take advantage of. When you think about it, public safety, they've been told what they're going to use for the last 20, 30, 40 years. Now that's changing. Public safety, through FirstNet, we now have the opportunity to tell the vendor community, all right, this is what we want. And now we have the reach, because we're taking advantage not only of the millions of public safety users in this country, but the fact that AT&T now is bringing their extra 120 million users that can leverage the network in the same way that public safety can. That's a game changer when you think of market scale. And so as a result, now we have Samsung, they've got their Note 7, that's all got Band 14 in it. We've seen other new device manufacturers, LG is out there. And so there's a number of companies who are looking at this, not only from the United States perspective, but we've had folks, you know, travel to 3GPP standards bodies all around the world, as well as conferences. And we're seeing folks in South Korea, you know, they're around the Olympic Games, they built their network. The Japanese, for the next Olympics in 2020, they're building a 5G network, and they're coming to us saying, what's worked, what hasn't worked? How can we take advantage of what you guys have done? And if you think about this global market that we're now able to build and then take advantage of, public safety back here in the United States will only benefit. And I think that's a really, really key aspect when dealing with the likes of Samsung and Apple and others who are these huge multinationals, that we can see public safety at the local level down here in Sioux Falls or in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, or NYPD, take advantage of that from a pricing point of view, from an application point of view, from a device diversity point of view. I think that's pretty neat. And again, that's another benefit of the FirstNet aspect that we've been able to bring forward. I mentioned applications, and I think this is going to be a key differentiator for what it is we can provide to FirstNet. So we have an application developers program where we now, I think on the App Store at FirstNet, we've got about 25, maybe 40 apps that are specific to public safety. And there's a whole process in terms of what folks have to go through when you think about, again, the security that's going to be around any sort of application. Android doesn't really require the type of testing that we are going to mandate in terms of making sure that we have no bad actors, no bad software, no bad applications that appear on the FirstNet system. And there's a whole variety of certification that application developers have to go through, leveraging various tools to ensure the cybersecurity is front and center of what it is we're trying to do. And this is going to also be there's going to be a management of this application ecosystem through the App Store, something that AT&T is obviously paying very, very close attention to. But then we also at FirstNet, we have our own applications team that is looking at this. We have our own cybersecurity team to ensure, again, to check, recheck, and then do it all over again to make sure that we don't have the bad type of actors appearing on the FirstNet system. Is there a risk? Of course, you can never eliminate that. But what you have to try and be is as vigilant as possible across the entire system. And I think that's the key part of this next slide, which is the security aspect of the network. And so what we have a 24/7, 365 security operations center that's out in Bedminster, New Jersey, as part of the AT&T's GNOC. And I can invite folks, certainly Jeff and Mike from the state point of view. They're always welcome to come and visit this place because it's a fascinating aspect. It gives you that 24/7, 365 look at the network. Making sure identifying how healthy it is, also understanding where the risks are, how they're being mitigated by AT&T to ensure that we do have that security, which again, as I mentioned before, it's a keystone of what it is we're trying to achieve. A lot of networks, security is an add-on on top of what exists already. From FirstNet's perspective, it was one of the key 16 objectives that we put out there when we were actually deploying the system in the first place. So having it from the ground up, inserting it in the core, the RAN, the device ecosystem, and any software and hardware that's out there is just a key differentiator about what it is we're trying to achieve. Service plans, I won't spend too much time on this, but again, if you go to firstnet.com, you can get a quick overview. And I believe, Jeff, the state has signed a contract to purchase service on the system. Yep, that's good. So FirstNet today, Public Safety today, I beg your pardon, can go out there and purchase FirstNet service. And it's competitive. And this is the beauty about the system. There is no mandate out there to leverage FirstNet services. What there is the market. And so public safety, again, they're in the powerful position of saying, look, if the service that FirstNet provides or the solutions that we provide isn't quite what they want, they're able to go out into the marketplace and compete for those services. And that's, again, a key differentiator. So when it comes to service, that's, again, a key aspect of what it is we're trying to achieve. Now, we are going to be making that front and center of everything we do. But again, puts the power back in the hands of public safety for the first time. And frankly, I think that's a really, really good thing and something that we really try to make front and center of everything we do at FirstNet. So penultimate slide, and there's been a few, not too many questions yet, that's all right. These are just some of the early benefits of what we've seen over at FirstNet. And I won't go through them all, but I think, again, the network that exists today is going to look very different to the network that will exist next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, especially when you think of things like evolving technology, different devices that are brought to the marketplace, different change in applications and how they're going to be leveraged. Who knows exactly what the network will be in 2020, 2025, 2020, 2030. But that's okay, because we're going to be there to ensuring that the network is up and running, efficient, and provided solutions for public safety. And then AT&T is going to be making sure that this is front and center of everything they do. As I mentioned at the beginning, they've integrated this FirstNet solution into all aspects of what it is they're providing. And again, great opportunity for public safety. These are some of our early or late on priorities that we have, just in terms of ensuring that we we get out there. The penultimate one there on the right there, the reinvestment. This is just one aspect of the piece that a lot of folks aren't quite sure of. AT&T is investing a lot of money into the FirstNet system, and it's our responsibility to ensure that we reinvest that that revenue back into the network in the most efficient manner possible, and one where we get the biggest bang for our buck. So we have to go out there, we have to engage with public safety, we have to work with the states to ensuring that there's no point in someone sounding like me, a guy from DC, come out to just tell the guys in the state of South Dakota, well, this is what's going to work great for you guys. Trust me. We're the federal government. Trust me, we're here to help, right? Eddie made that point earlier. And that's, I think, where the key relationship between Jeff's team, Mike's team, ourselves is going to continue. And so staying engaged with your single point of contact here in South Dakota is going to be really important for the community, both in terms of the private sector as well as folks, at the regulatory level, at the state and local piece. And I think making sure that that partnership continues to deepen and grow is going to be a key aspect of ensuring that what it is we try and put out there from a priority point of view is a success. So there's a lot of talking, probably a bit too much walking up and down. Questions? Craig.
Thanks for coming all the way over, Ed, and giving us this presentation. Craig Snyder from Sioux Falls Tower. You mentioned the rural build-out and that FirstNet has a contract with AT&T. How do you see that happening, or how does that work in places like South Dakota where we still have a lot of white spaces?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. There was one slide up here on coverage that some reason didn't come up. That's okay. I know it's Jeff's number one topic. I think we have to accept that while on the one hand, coverage is going to be one of the most important aspects of what it is we can do. I mean, we all know in our homes, in our neighborhoods and so on, as we're driving down the street or walking, we know, okay, well, hang on, I'm not going to get coverage around the corner here, so the call might drop. Public safety that can't happen for them, right? They have to know that they can trust this network with their lives. It's going to take time. We have a finite series of resources in terms of money, and there's going to be an enormous amount of challenges out there that public safety requires us to be able to do. And it's going to be up to, I think, frankly, the relationship that we have with the state. It's going to be the relationship we have with AT&T. And it's going to be that partnership, working together with those three groups as well as public safety and industry to understand how we're going to prioritize respective needs and in terms of where we're going to invest, how the network is going to grow, and ultimately, as we see the network perform over years and the evolving priorities of public safety, how that then is going to be responded to in terms of additional deployment over the next 20 years past 2022. Another aspect of that, I think, too, is the deployables, which I think is going to be a key aspect of this. I think we all know that there are certain parts of the country, certain parts of South Dakota, where it's just not economically viable to have a permanent site in a position. It would be amazing if we could just blanket the country and, 1 million towers and, everything works great in a 5G environment. I mean, that's just not economically feasible. And so we have to be able to understand where those priorities are going to be and where we can deploy and where we can't deploy. I think deployables are going to be a key aspect of that, ensuring that the Sturgis Rally and other events that take place across the state, across the country, have the type of really capacity to respond to certain challenges. And that's going to be a reflection of, and I think the success of that is going to be a reflection of the relationships that we have, not only with the state, but with local public safety. So we hear their stories and we hear their wants and needs. And the third aspect of this, I think, is really going to be evolving technologies that are out there. I mean, who here can honestly say, hand on heart, 10 years ago, that drones would be what they could be? I was at this I saw this ridiculously fascinating presentation last week in Jackson, where there's this company out of Europe that they're building drones that can take maximum of 4 people, 500 miles. I mean, they've built a prototype that weighs over a ton, and they say this thing flies. I mean, I'm not going to be the bunny that jumps in that thing to begin with, but, that's a drone. Now, I didn't even think that that's something that's possible, but that, again, I think is what's really cool about the project. It's the next thing. It's the next technology. And being able to take advantage of what that next thing is a key part of what it is FirstNet will be judged on in terms of our success. How can we integrate these new technologies? How can we make sure that public safety has access to these type of technologies in the same way that, my daughter who's 18 months, by the time, she's probably driving, will she even need a driver's license because of automated cars? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. And I think, maybe that's not a great example, but I think you can kind of see what our thinking is. How do we take advantage of those kind of technologies in the future so that public safety ultimately get the network that they need?
Hi, I'm Cheryl Johnson. I currently work at Roosevelt High School, but I am running for the House seat in my district. And I am wondering, because I want to move South Dakota, keep moving us forward. What are things that our counties, our state, what are things we can do to prepare to work with FirstNet? Do we need to focus on certain areas of education? Just kind of what can we do as a state to, I guess, work with you guys?
No, it's a great question. And sorry, Jeff, to keep focusing in on you, but as a single point of contact, Jeff Pierce is really the key guy here. And Jeff, do you want to just wave your hand very quickly? He is the main guy here in South Dakota through which we run a lot of our interaction. We do have direct relationships with cities, municipalities, public safety groups, etc., all across the country. When it comes to coordinating efforts in a single state, we tend to go through the single point of contact. It just really allows for efficiencies, both in terms of pushing information out, but more importantly, receiving information back to the organization. So engaging with Jeff, his contact information is on the firstnet.gov website, down under the single point of contact tab, email, phone number, and so on. Sorry, I'm totally throwing you under the bus here, Jeff, but he also has a real job too, so it's not just us. But I think that's a key part about it. One of the new initiatives we're going to be taking in FirstNet in the future is really engaging with centers of education. I think initially we're going to be focused on universities, especially those sort of technical folks, where we can think about how we can integrate emerging technologies and leveraging the education systems that are out there. One program that I'm very, very keen to try and install is interaction with universities across the country. And obviously, you've heard my focus. It's not just, the coastal guys and not including rural communities, but I think engaging with universities from across the country and getting a really, really important, diverse cross-section of the United States is going to be a key part of this. But, one step at a time. I think step number one, get engaged with Jeff. Step number two, he's got my contact information. Cheryl and the team here have, happy to I'll leave a bunch of business cards with Cheryl so that she has it, my stuff, and you're welcome to reach out and stay engaged that way too. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate the time, and it's always good to be back.